All right, welcome everyone. Drew is going to put an attendance sheet in the chat box. You are here today for the Integrating MWEEs and Planning for Learning Outdoors. It's part 4 of our Using the Outdoors as a Classroom training that we've been doing over the past several weeks. So we're going to get started here in a minute. Drew, are you with me? There we go. Okay, I wanted to make sure I didn't lose him. All right, so if you don't know me, my name is Mary Westland. I am the program coordinator here at Mayo. Joining me today as my producer is Drew Powell. He is the program assistant here at Mayo, as well as Alana Kellner, also program assistant. She'll be here attending. And I also like to welcome Elise Chulligan from NOAA. So Elise, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Elise Chulligan. I work for the NOAA Chesapeake Bay office, and I coordinate the Bay Program Education Work Group with the co-chairs Shannon Sprigg and Tom Ackerman. I'm excited to be here to chat about MWEEs with you all today.
Awesome, and we are so happy to have you here. All right, so today, as with every other day, we have a short time together, but it's going to be interactive. Couple of the tools that we're going to be using are breakout rooms. We're going to have a breakout room for collaboration and discussion. We will be using the chat, so make sure you are paying attention because I might call on you and ask you to, or at least might call on you and ask you to share information. There will be open discussion and a Slido poll. So as I am talking, go ahead and log into slido.com. And the code is 837587, and Drew is going to go ahead and put that information in. So we'll get started on that poll in about a minute or two. So go ahead and sign into that so that you're ready for our Slido, and make sure that you're ready. If you want to just give me a hand wave or, a check mark or some sort of sign that you are here and ready to learn, that would be great. Got a couple of thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you. Smiley face, frowny face, sad face, anything, anything that how you're feeling. It'll just let me know that you're here and ready. All right, thanks for playing along with that. Okay, so our agenda today, hopefully if my computer will forward. Let's see, no, it's just freezing now. Awesome, great. It is, oh, there we go. Okay, it's just a little slow. I think it's the storm, the impending storm. So we are going to at least introduce herself. So again, this is part 4 of the 5-part series, and we're going to discuss how the 4 essential elements of MWEEs can be used. We've had a lot of discussions about using the outdoors as a classroom. So we're going to integrate the MWEE 4 essential elements into everything that we've been talking about and learning about these past couple of weeks. And you're going to get to examine ways to integrate them into your planning. So there we have an activity for you that you'll be collaborating on as well. And this is just our agenda for today. We are going to do a 3-week recap, just a real quick recap just to get you set up for Elise's presentation on MWEEs. And then we'll do an activity. There'll be some Q&A and some wrap up evaluation and some announcements. All right, so let's get ready for our poll. So the question is, are you familiar with MWEEs and the essential elements of issue definition, outdoor field experiences, synthesis and conclusions, and action projects? This will give us and Elise some idea of who is here with us today. So again, go to slido.com, type in the code 837587, and that's in the chat box as well. And let's see what we know. We'll wait a few more seconds to see where we are. We have 17 in so far. Any of you who are not in, go ahead and sign in. It would be great to know, get a real number of who's here. So it looks like many of you, 56% of you are familiar with MWEEs, but not real sure about the 4 essential elements. It's okay, because Elise is going to go into those in more detail in a couple minutes here. And you will hopefully get some new ideas and tricks and information. If 32% of you are very familiar with both, so that's great. We're hoping that you are going to strengthen your knowledge today, and we'll give you some additional background information to support anything that you're doing already in your classrooms. And if it looks like about 16% of you not heard of MWEEs, you are in the right place at the right time. So that's great. Just we ask that you enter this training with an open mind, and we'll provide additional resources and information for you to become more familiar with those MWEEs. So great. Thank you for participating. All right. So we're going to do a quick recap here. For the past 3 weeks, we've been talking about best practices, integrating the outdoor classroom, using the outdoors as a classroom into your curriculum, evaluating the school grounds. So week 1 was all about those best practices. So I just wanted to set the stage. When Elise is presenting about MWEEs and the 4 essential practices, think about how those essential practices or essential elements are going to fit into the new routines that we discussed, those new habits, additional time that has to be accounted for, materials, the stimuli, the space, and the preconceived notions. So just think about that as she is talking about issue definition, outdoor field experiences, synthesis and conclusions, and stewardship and civic action. Okay. And week 2, and this is where I need you to get into your chat and answer some questions. We talked about before going outdoors. So which of the before going outdoors tips do you find easiest to accomplish right now? So in the chat, let me know what you find easiest out of those 3. Okay, so we have purpose. A lot of purpose is the easiest, okay? Expectations, nice. Expectations and purpose. Okay. I'm not seeing a lot of connecting the outside and the inside of learning. So we have mostly expectations. I see 1 connecting to a lot of clarity, and it's easy for you to do purpose and expectations, but not everyone finds it easy to connect the outside and the inside learning. It's okay. So if you are not finding something easy, use that as a basis for some of your thinking during this discussion. The next question is the outdoors. So let's switch it up a bit. Which of the outdoor tips do you find most challenging right now? Think about what you find most challenging. So go ahead and put that response in the chat box. First 3 out or time. Yeah, giving students time. Or just time management. Gotcha. Okay. A lot on time. All right. So when we're going through this training today, you are going to add what you find easiest and how that might support what you find the most difficult. So it looks like time is the most difficult at this point, or most challenging. Okay, and you're going to weave that together with my next question of back in the classroom? What do you hope to implement more over the next weeks, months, next school year? I know school's almost out, so we might not get to do that in the next week, but weave that together with what do you want to do more of? Okay. Nice, linking content. Sharing, the joy of the outdoors, definitely. Linking content. So it looks like sharing and linking. Nice, are the two that I'm seeing most of in the responses. All right. So now you're set up for the week 2. So keep those in mind as we continue to week 3. Okay. And last week you got to evaluate the school grounds. And this is a great segue into the meaningful watershed experiences, or MWEEs, and the 4 essential elements of MWEEs and how they relate to each of these categories. But before I hand it over to Elise, I want you to consider these questions. Okay. How might place-based learning tie into issue definition? Okay, you don't have to answer it yet. This is just a kind of getting you mentally ready. How might outdoor field experiences foster adventure, wonder, and health? And how might your students be engaged in the community and practice stewardship and civic action? And then what strategies could you use in each of these categories to strengthen synthesis and conclusion skills? Okay. And just give that a think for a second. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I am going to turn it over to Elise.
All right. And I'm going to try to share my screen now. And let's see, Mary, can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see it and if you can hear me? Awesome. Thanks so much. That was really, hearing that recap was really helpful for me. And I'm glad to hear that some people are kind of familiar with MWEEs already, and some folks maybe even consider themselves a MWEE expert, or at least pretty far along. So we're going to be relying on your experience today, because I do have a number of questions that I'll be asking throughout just to really draw on experience. And I know it seems like people are really comfortable using the chat box, which is excellent. But if you are also comfortable coming off mute, and if that is an option, Mary, I guess I should ask that in advance, it would be great to just like verbally hear some of what you all are doing in terms of the essential elements. So I'd like to provide that space if you feel comfortable sharing. I think that it only benefits us all to kind of like hear what it practically looks like. So with that, like I said, my name's Elise Trelligan. I work for the NOAA Chesapeake Bay office, and like 80% of my job is around the meaningful watershed educational experience. And I wanted to share a little bit about kind of where the MWEE comes from, because I think it's important to kind of contextualize how widespread this environmental literacy effort is. And I think it really is something that's pretty unique to our region and that we should be proud of. So how many folks, maybe just in the chat really quick, are like familiar, have heard of the meaningful water, or the Chesapeake Bay watershed agreement before? Or you could maybe thumbs up on your emojis as well. Heard of the Chesapeake Bay watershed agreement? All right, I'm seeing a couple thumbs up. So awesome, that's great to hear. So essentially this is like the guiding principle for the Chesapeake Bay watershed to restore and protect the bay. And so there's all sorts of partners that work together on this: state, federal, nonprofit, universities, and schools are part of that too. Because in 2014, when we re-upped the Chesapeake Bay watershed agreement, a key piece was added, and that was the environmental literacy goal that you see demonstrated on the screen here, which essentially asks for students in the region to graduate with the knowledge and skills to act responsibly to protect and restore their local watershed. I want to emphasize the local watershed piece here, because I know that not everybody is located right at, like, you know, the mouth of the bay, or actually none of us are really located at the mouth of the bay in Maryland. But it doesn't mean that you have to be right next to the bay necessarily to like see yourself in this work. And it really is about the local context, which we'll kind of dig into more. Within this kind of goal, there's an entire outcome around students. And essentially, it's for every single student in the Chesapeake Bay watershed states to have a meaningful watershed educational experience, which is the MWEE, once in elementary, once in middle, and once in high school. And we recognize this is a tall order, but it's a really great thing to be working towards for every single school, every single teacher, to be kind of working towards providing this unique environmental literacy opportunity for students. And so that's what I'll be sharing about today with you. And just know that you can always get more information on the website. But ultimately, what the goal of kind of this this agreement and really about the environmental literacy student outcome is for students to be able to make informed decisions. So, we recognized in 2014, at least, that it wasn't enough to just be working on oyster policy and working with communities and working in these different spaces. We really needed to start working with our youngest stewards and the future of the watershed. So we're really trying to support young people in making informed decisions. So when they get to the point in their careers where they are, in decision-making, policy-making positions, they can make informed decisions. So just what is a MWEE generally? Maybe we can actually start a chat waterfall in here just to kind of kick this off. So if everybody could go to the chat, and I don't know if you guys have done chat waterfalls before, but essentially what I want you to do is don't click enter yet. Spend like 10 seconds, and I'll give you 10 seconds starting after I say what the prompt is, to tell us what comes to your mind when you hear meaningful watershed educational experience. And maybe you know a lot about what this is already, or maybe you just kind of like taking in what those 4 words are and what that could mean to you and your students. So go ahead, I'll count down from 10. And then when I get to 0, then click enter and we can see everything that's kind of coming in. And Mary, if you can help me with the share out, because I don't know if I'll be able to see the chat, but 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Everybody can click enter. Awesome. And I can actually see some of these. So preserving our local water resources, skipjack trips. Ooh, that sounds fun. Field trips to the bay, field trips to somewhere wet, knowing your home's watershed address and where the water goes. Students give our school a grade on how well we're doing, maybe environmentally, hands-on education and responsibility, hands-on experience, lots of hands-on. And I love that somebody also mentioned civic action. So yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you guys have the concept here for sure. If I were to define MWEEs kind of generally, I'd say that they're learner-centered experiences. They focus on investigations into real-world issues. Usually there's a driving question that kind of guides the inquiry that's set up by teachers, because we need MWEEs to be anchored to standards, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And MWEEs are really just a kind of project-based learning where students go outside, they have outdoor experiences, and they eventually take an informed action on the inquiry that they're kind of following. So I'm going to dig into the essential elements next. And so you can see that there's 4 of them. And I know something that Mary wanted me to emphasize today, because MWEEs are a little bit of a tall order, right? It takes practice to be able to do this work well in your classroom. And also it takes time. And I saw time come up over and over again in the chat earlier. And so I just want to recognize that, like, it takes a lot of work to get towards having like a really strong MWEE, but there's maybe this misconception out there too, that there are these like huge experiences that require a lot of funding, require a lot of travel, things like that. MWEEs can be simple too. And so I hope that I'll kind of share that today. And I hope that some of the reflections that you all can provide will also kind of build off of that. And maybe we can talk about what MWEEs on school grounds look like, because that's a very sustainable kind of MWEE from my perspective. So these are the 4 essential elements: issue definition, outdoor field experiences, synthesis and conclusions, and stewardship and civic action. And this graphic here doesn't perfectly encapsulate what I would love it to, but essentially something I want you to notice about it is that their issue definition and synthesis of conclusions are happening throughout the process. And then stewardship and civic action is kind of towards the end because it really should be informed by the investigations. That's my perspective on it. I know that other people have differing perspectives, so I'm just sharing my experience here. So we're going to dig into each one of these. Issue definition, what does this practically look like? So I mentioned driving questions. Maybe you've heard of essential questions before. Maybe you call them, focusing questions. I've heard a number of different terminologies, but essentially this is the question that guides the inquiry, the big picture of what students are learning. So a really common question that is used in MWEEs is, how do actions on my school grounds impact my local watershed or creatures in my local watershed, or whatever it may be? So that's a really broad question. It's open-ended. There isn't a yes or no answer to it. And students can really kind of find their pathway in there. But it also is likely anchored to standards. And I just want to emphasize again that this is really important. You all are teachers, you know this better than I do, better than anybody does. If you're not meeting standards with the work that you're doing in your classroom, it's really challenging to justify doing it. So whether that's taking a field trip or doing a full-blown meaningful watershed educational experience, you need to be able to justify it, right? And so we're gonna do an activity a little bit later in thinking about some of the standards that you might link this to. And so your driving question is probably connected to your standards. And then within that, students are asking questions, or you're working with them to co-develop questions or supporting questions, investigative questions, to dig deeper into that driving question. So if we're thinking about how our actions on the school ground impact organisms in our local watershed, some questions that we might have about that may be, what sorts of organisms are in our local watershed? What sort of practices are we engaging in on our school grounds? So students can certainly support co-developing those questions. You may also support the development of supporting questions as well. And something that you'll hear me kind of weaving throughout this whole process, this whole presentation today, is this idea of student voice. And I think it's really important to kind of put it up front, because really what MWEEs are doing, you heard me say learner-centered. So we really want students to be directing their learning as much as possible. And that's scaffolded, of course, across the grade bands. So that might look different in kindergarten than it does in an AP environmental course. So issue definition can look like a variety of different things. What does it practically look like? It could be like this photo here, a lab experiment where students are understanding a concept or phenomenon through a particular experiment that they're doing in the classroom. It can also be doing background research using empirical evidence, looking at different journal articles, newspaper stories, trying to understand the scope of what it is that they're investigating. Also say that issue definition can take place outdoors. So it could be considered an outdoor field experience. And so I want to challenge you now, and we'll do the chat again for this one. And actually, before we try the chat, let's see if anybody wants to come off mute and maybe share a little bit about what issue definition could potentially look like, or has looked like for you on school grounds. What does that mean? And when I say on school grounds, I mean like outside, not in the classroom.
So when I taught a marine biology class in Baltimore City, we had a dirty stream behind our school, and we went out every week to test phosphates, nitrates, dissolved oxygen, and a couple other things. And we also cleaned it. And the goal of it was to write a proposal to the city officials to design a way to keep the garbage from coming in the stream.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And so the connection to issue definition that I think I'm hearing is students went out to a stream to define what the issues were. And I think I heard two different issues that you were maybe exploring. One of those was garbage, like trash pollution. And then the other one was like maybe a chemical sort of water quality related issue.
We also did a macroinvertebrate study. And we had borrowed microscopes from Hopkins that were really good, better than our compound microscopes. And it was amazing. Like we saw like the organisms looked like they looked in the textbooks instead of like something, I don't know. It was really cool to have them loan us those microscopes.
Did you have a driving question for the inquiry, or it's okay if you didn't? I'm just curious.
No, we just did, that was our weekly thing. That's what we did. It was like a journal. And then at the end of the semester, we it was like straight up research. Like, and I told kids, I was like, sometimes this research is boring, but this is what you get out of it. And so they really got to see the process from the birth to like, what do you do with it?
Yeah, that's one of the beauties of the MWEEs from my perspective, is being able to engage students in the science and engineering practices. And that's just what it is that you're doing there. Does anybody else want to share about what issue definition has looked like or could look like on school grounds?
Yeah, I work in an elementary school, and we are fortunate enough that we have a wetlands and a stream along the side of our property. So I've used the schoolyard grade books, different ones, and I've taken the kids out and we've kind of scored our schoolyard to see kind of how it does, and identified issues from there. And those became our driving questions once we had finished those surveys.
I love it. And so those were those kind of like some of the assessments that you might find with, and that National Wildlife Federation has, like a schoolyard assessment.
Yeah, I did one with 1 year we did that one, or one that we found through there. And then another year we did one that I got through the Chesapeake Bay Foundation with one of their workshops. So we've done a couple of different ones. The wildlife habitat was actually the one that I did this year. And we were able to come up with a real simple project to do from that survey.
That's great. And how easy did you find it for like connecting it back to the classroom work that you already needed to be doing?
So not particularly this time around, just because I had like 2 weeks at the end of the year to do it. So I wasn't really as worried about it. But in previous years, I've been successful in doing that, especially because the 5th grade has a standard about, the impact that humans have. And so anything you can tie to that is really easy to do with that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's exactly like any of those human impact standards, super easy to make a MWEE connection with. Does one other person want to share about issue definition, specifically if you like framing it around a phenomena or a driving question? No pressure. Mary, do we have anything in the chat? I can't multitask.
Nothing in the chat so far.
Okay, no worries. Because the wonderful thing about MWEEs is that it's very much an iterative process. So a lot of what was just shared between the two folks who just shared with us is that, outdoor field experiences can also very oftentimes be part of the issue definition piece. Sometimes I think we describe issue definition as being more kind of classroom, like happening in the classroom or as homework or as a research project. But outdoor field experiences can certainly be a part of that too. For the MWEE, we ideally aspire to have students having multiple outdoor field experiences because they could happen at a variety of times throughout the course of a MWEE. And what this potentially looks like is students collecting data, making observations. They can be things like collecting macroinvertebrates, like our first speaker kind of shared about. They could also be making just general observations about like, where is the rain falling on our campus, and where is it moving, and where is it kind of maybe stopping up too. So those are all kind of things that kind of count as outdoor field experiences, but ultimately it's not about just going outdoor for outdoor sake, right? It's about supporting the work that you're doing. And I can't remember, I'm sorry, I didn't get your names. Maybe next time people come out and share, you can say your name just so I can remember it. You mentioned being able to see the macroinvertebrates better than the pictures in the textbook. And so being able to justify why going outside can be super helpful, especially when we have to get over barriers with like permissions and like things like that. Being able to make the case for why, learning outside is really important. And there's a million of them, right? So like social, emotional, the actual inquiry is can be much more robust. There's a variety of different reasons. But being able to say that you can do your, the work that you already need to do, meet your learning objectives better, that's kind of clutch.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Andrea. Now I can see your name.
We partnered with Out Parks and People Foundation, and they gave us boots and raincoats, and it was really cool to get out in the rain and see what it does. They all wanted to get out in nice weather, but I was like, dude, this is when it's raining, that's when you really see what's happening. So we were planning on using the data to prove our case. So that was why we did it.
I love that. And you mentioned two things that I think are like super critical to outdoor field experiences. One, the power of partnerships. So there are tons of organizations like Mayo, like Parks and People, like ANS. There's tons of organizations that are willing to support you in outdoor field experiences on your school grounds or potentially offsite. And having opportunities to do some of that comparative investigation, what something's looking like on your school grounds versus at a forested park or something like that could be really helpful for trying to get, a point across that you're trying to make. And the second piece is that, going out and collecting data, not for collecting data's sake, but for making the case for something. So Andrea, you mentioned that you all were collecting, what was it, water quality data?
Yes, we collected water quality data.
And then your students ultimately, what did they do with that water quality data?
We put together a PowerPoint that we presented to city officials, and students presented it.
And did they have a call to action, or was it like, here's the data, do what you'd like with it, or hey, we noticed this something?
No, we used the macroinvertebrate study to back our data up, because if you know anything about macros, I'm talking to the rest of the group, not you, of course, but depending on the macros that you find, you can determine whether the water is clean or not, because there's some macros that don't live in dirty water. So yeah, it was a really cool experience. I enjoyed seeing it from beginning to end and doing it 2 semesters. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to provide an opportunity. Does anybody have an example of an outdoor field experience? And it doesn't have to be in the context of a MWEE. It could just be, using the outdoors that doesn't have to do with water necessarily, because not everybody is near a river or have the luxury of like being able to walk to a stream.
Well, you can link this to photosynthesis and cellular respiration, and just by going out and attaching a plastic bag to a tree branch and putting a clip or like a rubber band on it, so you can see how transpiration works. Like, where does the water come from? If it didn't come from the sky and dribble on it, then like you ask that question, you put the bag on and come back an hour later and go, okay guys, where'd the water come from? And then you come back to it. What was it? There's an organization out of UMBC, BESS, Baltimore Ecosystem Study, and I attended a lot of trainings with them. And I use their research to create this class that I'm telling you about. So I created everything that we did.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm seeing a bunch of stuff come in the chat now about natives versus invasive plant species. So many of our school campuses have plants, and a variety of them too. Maybe some are more or less populated with invasive versus natives. It's a great opportunity to explore that and potentially make a case to facilities to, change what it is that they're planting. I'm seeing bird watching with binoculars. What a great activity. And, just in terms of like accessibility, bird watching is something that you can do without having to do a lot of moving necessarily. So I really like that example. Phenology linked to climate change. Great, looking at when different buds are bursting. There's Project Bud Burst. Native plant garden with your students, and you count monarchs every year. These are all great examples of outdoor field experiences, and they can be as long or as short as needed. And you can do other things outdoors too, like bringing in community science to collect, rainfall data over time. So I'm hearing that kind of idea of long-term data as being maybe something that you can then connect back to historical data or forecasted data too. So that's outdoor field experiences. And then synthesis and conclusions. This is one that kind of trips people up sometimes, more on the non-formal side of the area. But So this is the conclusions. I like to think about it as happening kind of multiple times throughout the process. So every time students are engaged in digging into one of those supporting questions, providing time for reflection, analysis, thinking about how it connects back to the driving question is really important. And that could look like a variety of different things. I apologize for my dog in the background right now. It could look like a variety of different things, perhaps synthesizing data in charts and graphs. It could also be having a conversation verbally between students. It could also be sharing between classes or sharing to the principal. But then there's the big synthesis of conclusions that happens after this series of investigations. So students have learned about things by doing some background research, maybe looking at local newspaper articles. They see that there's, a dead zone maybe in a particular part of the Chesapeake Bay that maybe is not too far away from them. They understand the practices that are occurring on their school grounds by maybe looking at where is that water moving and where are things kind of piling up towards the stream. And then they can make a claim about it, hopefully. That's what ultimately we're trying to get to, is like, what's the claim that you can make based on the evidence that you've collected by going outside, by doing background research. And hopefully that's actionable. And that's something that as educators, keeping that in the back of our mind from the very beginning is really important if we are trying to do this full trajectory of the MWEE. And so I've already heard some examples. Actually, I don't know that I've heard examples of what synthesis and conclusions looks like. I'll ask this question broadly, so you can maybe build off some of the ideas that I've shared already, but then also if anybody has any unique ideas for doing synthesis and conclusions in an outdoor context, I am all ears. I can think of a couple, but it's a little bit of a stretch. So give folks a second to think about that.
Elise.
Yeah, hey Jan.
Hi, how are you? So a few years ago, I teach at a high school, and we did a series of field trips where each class went to a different location and they saw different problems. And then when they came back into the classroom, each class made a separate presentation that they shared with the other classrooms, so that each class, even if they didn't go to this location, they saw what the issue was, and the product that they produced were like mini posters that went on a display board out on the campus.
I love that. Yeah. And that's such a great example of like that kind of collaborative work that can happen between classes, and also something that I feel like we saw a lot of during COVID, when students were all working from their own homes, right? And some of the folks that did engage students in MWEEs had students collecting information from their home. Most of them were observations from a window, or maybe if they had a chance to go outside, but then rolling that up and saying, what does this say about our community? And being able to kind of share that is really a great example of synthesis and conclusions. And you're talking about them kind of sharing in a poster session, which is fantastic. Let's see, data collection with conclusions and questions about why and what would be actions. Okay, that's a great resource. Thanks for sharing that, Fawn. So another kind of thing that I've seen done before, this is like not me just making this up, is I've seen people use, and this is more using the outdoors as a place for learning rather than a context for learning, is using chalk and having students like do kind of a mind map of the flow of their investigations to see, first we did this, then we learned about that, and here's what I think about it, and then starting to brainstorm about what action opportunities there are. So that could happen. When I saw the picture of it, it was on a playground. And so that's an opportunity, but just bringing students outside to have conversations and engage in a dialogue can be a really great opportunity as well. But typically synthesis and conclusions happens in the classroom for the most part. This is the one that maybe doesn't connect back to school grounds quite as perfectly. And it can also happen in the digital space really effectively as well. And then our last essential element is stewardship and civic action. This is another time when like student voice is really important. I would say maybe most important. This is when students are brainstorming and evaluating solutions that address the issue that they learned about. So if we're coming back to our driving question of how our actions on school grounds may be impacting organisms in our local creek, perhaps we say something about the need for a riparian buffer along the stream that is going through our schoolyard, because we're seeing a lot of sedimentation, a lot of erosion, and that is thus impacting organisms. I'm really making this up right now, but this is perhaps an inquiry that you could follow. And so, if students, if that were the case, then you might ask students to kind of fill out a CER, or a claim evidence reasoning sheet, which is something that, you probably already use in your classrooms regularly, or if you don't, then your English teacher probably is. And then have them, kind of brainstorm what is the variety of solutions that we can engage in. And I want to open everybody's mind today, particularly around the stewardship and civic action piece, because the picture that I have here is is not the best example from my perspective. I think oftentimes when we think about action, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to order 500 plants and it's going to be this whole day. I'm going to have to work with facilities and fill out a PIF and everything. It's like really stressful, but action doesn't need to look like that. And really, we should broaden our horizons of what it could potentially look like, because when we think about what is maybe most impactful, it might not be boots on the ground stewardship. But that's not to say that there's not a lot of value in engaging students in that either. So I just want to think about the variety of different action projects that could potentially happen, and challenge you to think about what that could potentially look like on your school grounds. So this is our kind of last share out, but I'd love to open it up to anybody who's done a variety of different kinds of student action before, and thinking in all the camps of boots on the ground stewardship, communication and community engagement, stewardship and like the civic action piece, so actually engaging decision makers and leaders, and then everyday choices, which are like kind of things that are that students can do on an everyday basis, or maybe things that can change in the school that would impact them on an everyday basis.
We did something at the elementary school where I am, had them do when we were the fourth graders. We're doing a schoolyard assessment and figuring out our impacts on our local creek. And we found so much trash in the creek that the kids really decided that they wanted to pick up trash that could then wash down our streets and into the storm drains and into our creek. So we sort of had a grade by grade challenge, and kids, we had, rules set up for wearing gloves and doing this, that, and the other. And they logged hours that they went out with their families and picked up trash, and things that could be recycled, they sorted out and recycled, and things that had to be thrown away, they threw away. And so we did sort of a competition then for the whole school, where every grade kids logged, and we had a winner for the grade that collected the most for the most time. We did it based on time. So that was a fun way to have something that we did just with the fourth grade, all of the connections to all of our standards, but then we included the whole school. Since we're a green school, it just became a kind of a bigger project that everyone could get involved in.
That's awesome. Yeah, trash cleanups are super common types of action projects. But what I really like about what you were talking about was that the students then brought it home. And then we're actually not only engaging their families in the community cleanup, but also probably doing a little bit of education on the side too. So to me, that kind of hits a couple of buckets, which is really great. I'm just gonna, from the chat, Jen shared painting a storm drain. So bringing awareness to what it is that we're putting down storm drains and what that means for our local watershed or the Chesapeake Bay. Advocacy and awareness. Does anybody else want to share maybe one or two more ideas? Other examples that I've seen that I think are really cool that happen on school grounds, but that are getting more to policy, which I think is maybe where students can make the most impact. So not that there's anything wrong with cleaning up trash, but it is when we think about the root cause of like issues and that kind of like full trajectory of like interrupting the challenges that we have, picking up trash is like a reactive measure. But doing something like putting in a policy that we're not going to sell plastic bottles at our school is something that gets closer to that root cause and can make a lot of positive change. Also things like putting in like anti-idling signs. So when parents are in the carpool lane, that they're not idling their cars. Those are just some examples of action that start to get towards those like bigger level changes. And they also have, oftentimes at least, students are engaged in actually like the process of making those things happen. So talking with leaders, understanding the pros and the cons of why some of those things can and can't happen. I just really feel that action is like this huge opportunity. It's really where a lot of learning can happen for young people. So I'll just put my plug in there. And then I know I'm already running late on time, so I'll just really quickly gloss over the supporting practices, but these are probably things that are come naturally to you as it is. But in addition to the supporting practices, which are the essential elements rather that students do, teachers are engaged in these supporting practices, being active throughout the whole course of the MWEE. So it's not enough to just like turn your kids over to the environmental educator that's coming to your school for the day. Because you're the person who really understands how everything fits into the scope and sequence. And you're a huge role model for students in and of themselves. So if you're afraid of putting your hands in the dirt, good chance that others will be too. So being able to kind of model those practices is really clutch. Curricular integration, so making sure that, again, it's connected back to standards, that it's really working in the time frame that you're trying to engage students in the outdoors. In particular, we know that like the spring and the fall time is usually, especially the spring, the best time to bring students outdoors, but making sure that it kind of lines up with your curriculum is really important. The local context. So obviously we're talking here about like things that are happening on the school grounds, issues, phenomenon, problems that are in the local community, rather than polar bears or lions, or I don't know. The local context is key to the MWEE. And then sustained activity. This is one that everybody asks the question, how long do MWEEs take? And I heard, I saw the time thing. They definitely take time. And, but like in terms of the sustained activity, they don't happen over the course of one day, but over the course of multiple experiences. And a lot of that is probably things that is already happening in your classroom, hopefully building on experiences that are already maybe funded by your school system. And we're going to have a chance to dig into a tool that really helps you to think about that in just a couple of minutes here. So again, just to reiterate, the expectation is not that every single teacher is going to be teaching MWEEs, right? We do hope to have elementary, middle, and high school, every student having one of these experiences in those different grade levels. But even if you're working towards that, trying to chunk it out and thinking about how you can support each of the essential elements in your own time. A lot of the tips that you've heard from Mary and the Mayo team previously probably really support your outdoor field experiences, your issue definition, and maybe even some of the stewardship and civic action and synthesis and conclusions too. And just know that, as teachers, you're an expert in all of this already. So it's not about like recreating the wheel or trying to build something that's completely new, but really trying to build off of what you already have. Mary, should I come back to MWEE resources after we do the activity, or do we want to go right to that now?
Let's do the MWEE resources like you had planned, and then we have plenty of time.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're good.
So these are a couple of resources that can help you in your planning if you're interested in kind of starting this journey. The first resource is the MWEE guide. This is like the keystone resource that was developed back in 2012, 2013. And it's essentially this like textbook for MWEEs. It includes all of the definitions that we shared and talked about today, as well as like a case for why MWEEs. So like kind of 4 really core things that we think that they do well, and not that we think that research tells us that they do well. And then also there's the toolbox in the back, and we're going to practice with one of the tools today. But in addition to that, there's a full environmental literacy model, which helps you to really chart out what the MWEE looks like, as well as planning tools for helping you to think about driving and supporting questions and connecting issue definition to claims and informed action. All those sorts of things in between. So the MWEE guide is a great resource. It is available. And actually, this is a screenshot here of the environmental literacy model. And I just wanted to point out that there's like those multiple investigations that are demonstrated in this tool. And this is really a planning tool, and it's supposed to support people in kind of planning out what those investigations look like over a course of time and thinking about how you're going to engage student voice throughout the process. the MWEE 101 and 201 courses. So if you're looking for CPD credit, you can actually get credit through taking these courses. They are on our online learning platform called Chesapeake Exploration. And this is the link, but we can also share it. I can share it in the chat after this as well. This is basically the textbook in an online course format and a little bit more interactive and engaging. The best part, in my opinion, about MWEE 101 is that you're following 3 case studies. So there's one in elementary, one in middle school, and one in high school. And you actually hear from the teachers who are who've designed these MWEEs through a series of videos about their perspective putting them together, as well as like what it looks like in the classroom. And so not only do you see the videos, but you also see their completed environmental literacy model. So you can see how they planned, and then you can see it kind of visually too. It's kind of cool. And then MWEE 201 digs in even deeper. So this is really where we've kind of built out some of the challenges that we know teachers and educators face in the MWEE, which are around incorporating student voice and getting towards stewardship and civic action. Because that is it typically is the thing that's left off. So people, are relatively comfortable doing issue definitions, synthesis and conclusions, and then outdoor field experiences tends to be a little bit more challenging. Action's always left off, but it's so critical to the process. So that's what MWEE 201 really digs into. And all of this, the MWEE guide, the online courses, as well as the videos, even more resources are all available on baybackpack.com. This is kind of the one-stop shop for everything MWEE. But in addition to those things, it also has teaching resources and action project ideas. And we're so lucky to have partners like MAEOE who have really helped us to kind of shape what this looks like. So we're constantly updating this page and or this website, and it's definitely worth a check out if you're interested in this sort of thing. So those are the kind of key MWEE resources. And now I want to kind of engage you all in a little bit of an activity around thinking about how MWEEs could be integrated into your own classroom. And so this is the MWEE Think Cloud over here on the left-hand side. Really, it's just like the most basic of documents to help you think. It's a couple of question prompts to get you thinking about like where MWEEs already fit. So I'll go over kind of what the questions are that we're gonna talk about, and then I'll explain the Jamboard. So the questions are, what are the overall goals and learning objectives or objectives for learning? So you might be calling out your standards. Maybe you know that you're kind of not fully hitting something that you want to do better at. And so that's where it could potentially live. What are outdoor or environmental related field trips, outdoor assets, or other resources that exist at your school or your site? So what are you already doing that you can just very simply plug into and maybe build off of or elaborate on? I personally think that's where, the best place to start, but that's just my opinion. What are the local issues, problems, or phenomenon to explore? So thinking specifically about your school grounds, what are the opportunities there? Who can you collaborate with on this project? So are there partners like Parks and People or a local university or your master naturalist that you can bring in to kind of bring some of the content or the support for the outdoors that you might need at this point? And then just generally, what else do I need to consider? A lot can go into that category, right? But just like some space for you to do some thinking about it. And so when we go into breakout rooms, I think we're going to do 2 breakout rooms. And essentially, you're going to see a Jamboard. And I'm hoping that people are relatively familiar with Jamboard. But if not, we can definitely provide instructions when we get in there. Essentially, it's a Google platform. It's like a whiteboard, and you can add different sticky notes. You're going to see 6 different slides. Each one of those will have one of these Think Cloud questions. And what we're hoping you can do is we'll kind of go through each one, whoever's facilitating in each session, maybe we can share our screens. And then we'll kind of talk through some of the things that are coming up for us. And ultimately, we want you to, on the last slide, put together your MWEE idea or your MWEE summary. And again, we don't have to hit every essential element here, but we're just trying to think through that process and really hone in on what you think you need to work on or what you'd like to work on the most. So that is the plan. Any questions maybe before we head over there?
I'm sorry, I have a question. I've been in 2 meetings for a while. This IEP meeting went forever. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so I see two things in the chat. How do I know yet which one I'm gonna need?
So when I open the breakout rooms, if
Then
you
I'll
were,
click the link before I go.
right.
Oh,
and
I see, okay.
Yeah, so if you want to, yeah, if you're in breakout room 1, then you will pick the breakout room
Okay,
1
I see.
chat. And then we'll come in and also double check that you have the right Jamboard. And if you're in breakout room 2, you're going to be in,
Click
you're
that
going to
one.
click the
Okay, thank
second
you.
one.
And Mary, we'll be in opposite breakout rooms, right? So
Yes,
Okay.
and Alana, I'm going to ask you to stay in the main room in case anyone comes in. Okay.
That sounds good.
All right, and I'm gonna move you. So don't click anything yet. All right, at least I have 2 breakout rooms and 15 minutes. So until 45, and we'll give you a 2-minute warning before we exit. Does that sound good?
that sounds good.
Great. I'm gonna open the rooms up and we'll see you all in the rooms.
Mary, I'm staying in this room, right?
Yes, you are going to stay in this room and I am going to join room 1. And Drew, go ahead and join whichever room you're assigned to. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and join.
Okay, so I will not join room 2.
Yeah, don't join room 2. And then Drew, whichever room you're in, go ahead. You're in room 2. There you go. And Evelyn, are you there? And Andrea, all right, I'm going to go to room 1.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And I'll wait here in case.
Yeah, in case anyone has questions and jumps back out or loses connection.
Andrea, are you seeing the invitation to join a breakout room? Let me know if you're having trouble joining. Hi, Evelyn. Do you want to go into a breakout room? Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
I do not know what happened because I'm using my cell phone. And then if you see now, I'm still joining. I do not know what happened. I'm
Oh,
on.
that's so weird. Okay, let me try. Do you want to try leaving the meeting and coming back in again?
Okay.
Okay.
Because I'm right now I'm on my laptop.
Okay, yeah, just try leaving and coming back, I think, on your
Okay.
laptop.
Okay.
Hi. Okay, so I am going to move you to, do you know which breakout room you were assigned? Okay, I'm going to move you there now. You should be able, okay.
Hey, Elise.
Hello. That happened way quicker than I expected.
It sure did. I took notes for our group. If you want me to share out, and then maybe I'm just volunteering my group to share out if that's kind of where you want to go with that, or we can go a different way if you want.
Yeah, if you guys want to share out first, and then if anybody
Sure.
from my group wants to be thinking about our share out, that would be awesome, but I can do it if needed.
So I was taking notes as the conversation was going on, and the tool, writing an objective for like the location, the specific location was sometimes challenging depending on, if you're in an urban environment, how do you write that specifically for that outdoor learning? And then the differences in culture and in understanding the environment and making that a priority so that the students take those lessons home and getting families involved in the actions that are being done at school, and then getting teachers to see the value in this tool. There was discussion around the tool being a concrete way to establish those goals and lessons, and getting buy-in from other teachers during planning stages. And if group one wants to add to that, please do. So that's what I was taking notes on.
I just wanted to say that yesterday I had my end of the year eval with my principal, and that was something that I talked about, which was buy-in. And, and the fact that it's not just a science department concern, we're a green school, not a green department. So just trying to figure out how am I going to use this summer, because we're 12-month employees, to create buy-in opportunities. So I think the first thing that we have to do, of course, is get the science department together with our first quarter objectives of what we want to do, and then we can convey that over to the other departments.
I just had something real quick to add along these same lines. It also goes with the families. The struggle sometimes we have getting families, especially of different cultures, engaged. What I've been doing during the pandemic, because I'm not in the schools, I work at a conservancy, is really spending time understanding how to diversify my programming so that it doesn't cater towards one objective of what I think environmental enjoyment should look like. So basically, it doesn't need to look like an REI ad or some sort of like Chesapeake Bay Foundation science project. So that may be having a musical concert outside, or it may be planning some sort of a civic event. I mean, it could be anything. And lots of different cultures engage with nature a lot differently than we do. And we don't always recognize it as engaging with nature. And so I'm not good at it yet, but I'm trying. And so I think that's one of the ways you can get buy-in pretty well, is by like going after what people are already doing outside-ish and going after what they really like. And I had this exercise from a course I was taking, which is basically to go into a new green area that you don't spend a lot of time in and just do observations of all the people that you see outside, and just write down exactly what they're doing, whether they're working on cars or whether they're picnicking or whether they're visiting on front porches, and then just doing an audit of all of those things. And then on the other Venn diagram, as part of a Venn diagram, and then put your programming over here and then see where you can get them to overlap.
I love that, Megan and Mrs. Cook. I think you both bring up like super important points. And I would argue that like the local context piece of MWEEs is really speaking to what you were just saying, Megan. It's important to engage, if you're bringing in partners, especially to like work with students, like thinking about, making sure that they're really like lining up with the values of your students and the values of the communities in which you're working. As well as the interests and perspectives. All of that is huge. And then Ms. Cook, you brought up the idea of like interdisciplinary, which we didn't get to really talk about today, but like MWEEs are not just for science, right? Like there's such a huge opportunity to engage in the arts, in social studies, in math, MWEEs are just a means for really investigating an issue, and in all of our classes, we're investigating issues. So they oftentimes do fall on the shoulders of our science supervisors, of our science teachers, but finding those opportunities for connection can help with that sustainability over time too. And so I think that's just such a great point that I didn't have a chance to make before, so thank you for making it. Any other, just since I know we're kind of running down on time here, maybe just like any other like big reflections from our conversation today?
Well, the thing I just wanted to add to what Ms. Cook said, because I'm not sure how you pronounce your first name. Yes, Riel? I don't know. It looks pretty, but okay. We have an outdoor learning space that was called the Science Courtyard for a long time. So teachers automatically said, oh, I don't need to go there because I don't have a science lesson. And so eventually we decided, oh, let's change the name of that space to help change their minds. So those little things that you don't realize that you're putting it in somebody's mind, that you can only do science there. Now it's an outdoor learning space. But I love that idea of having a concert outside, especially while people are still thinking that outdoors is safer because of COVID. Let's play music. I love that idea.
You could combine it with forest bathing if there's any nature out there, you know, just combine it with a little bit of a meditation to music and
yes.
Outdoors.
Yes.
Yeah, we do a lot of mindfulness at our school, so we did some cicada mindfulness when we went out and just listened to the cicada song and, you know, allowed that to be their backdrop, which was really fun. And of course the kids loved it. So because they wanted to do all cicada all the time.
I love that. And I'll just share the kind of one reflection that I think was really great. And Sarah, it might have been you who actually made it in our group, was just like this idea of place, and like for students to understand their place in the world, their place in their neighborhood, their place in their community, and that MWEEs can really provide a great context for doing that. And that kind of came up as like one of the major objectives that people see, and a major kind of goal for some of the work that they're doing. And I think that, you know, whether it's how we connect, it looks very different. And just like the idea of that concert is so cool. I love that. And harnessing students' ideas and talents in that action piece, that is something that could totally be an action project of a MWEE. And I like, please invite me if your students do that, because that sounds amazing. Yeah, I think that is kind of all the content that I have. Mary, I know you have some housekeeping things here at the end.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Elise. That was awesome. I do have a few things, just announcements I want you all to be aware of, and some opportunities that are coming up. So Drew, if you can help me out, put these links in the chat. So we have one more training coming up here on Thursday, same time, same place. If you haven't, if you know somebody who wants to register, have them register, and they'll be sure to get the updates and the announcements and the recordings. The recordings are also available on the MAEOE website, and Drew is going to put that specific page in the link as well, in the chat as well. If you didn't register, or if you didn't sign the attendance form when you got here, Drew is going to put the attendance sheet in. We're going to get certificates out this week. I know I'm behind on that, but you will get certificates for the trainings that you've attended if you fill out that attendance sheet. And then we do have two upcoming opportunities. So we have a community of practice that we are going to be starting in school year 21-22. And this is an opportunity for you to collaborate with other educators across Maryland and to receive support from a group of mentors. So we are working on that right now, and we would love to invite you to this community of practice. So if you're interested in joining, please fill out the interest survey that Drew is going to put the link in for that as well. So we will follow up with you in August, early September, right when school starts, and we'll get you connected with a mentor if you're interested in that. We also have a MAEOE Summer Institute, the registration. It's a free 3-day grant funded opportunity. That registration is going to open later this evening. So check your email if you are on our listserv, and check Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well for the information. If you don't get that information, please email me And I will get that to you. We have a capacity limit because one day is going to be in person with the option of being virtual if you're not yet comfortable being in person. So we have a capacity limit of 30, and it's for elementary and middle school teachers. So if you're interested in that, look for that registration coming up. And Drew is going to, let's see, put the community of practice link in the box too. So Drew, if you can do that for me, that would be great. I'm not going to switch to my next announcement. Okay, there we go. Until I see it. Thank you. Because I know there's a lot of links. So that community practice is going to start in the fall. So I strongly encourage you to join it. It's something new that we're trying. We did a kind of a pilot this fall, and we have some mentors who have supported us through that and are going to who've helped us to kind of improve that structure. So please join us there. Last but not least, we have a poll here for you. I just kind of want to see where you are, and I understand. So the question is, I understand how to integrate the 4 essential elements of MWEEs into my plans for using outdoors as a classroom. So go ahead and go to Slido, and it is slido.com. Okay. And it's hashtag 837587. All right, so you're ready, 70%, 30% not quite sure yet. That's okay. So if you are at that, 58%, it's changing. We're glad to hear that this has helped you a little bit, but please, check out the MWEE 101, MWEE 201 if you want some more information and to strengthen your skills there. If you're not quite there yet, no problem. We have, if you're in elementary and middle school, we're going to be going through some of the MWEE again during the Mayo Summer Institute. And you can also email myself or Elise and get more information. Definitely. Drew, if you can put our emails in the chat box, that would be great as well. And it doesn't look like anyone doesn't understand MWEE, so that's a good thing. But please, check out that community of practice too for, any level. Check out that community of practice. We're going to be talking about MWEEs, and it'll be throughout the school year, and that can help to support, the 4 essential elements, teaching outdoors. So it's going to be the whole thing of what we've been talking about in the trainings over the past couple of weeks. So check that out. Look for information in August and September. And with that, we are finished for the day. So we're going to be on for a couple more minutes if you have questions. But if not, have a lovely evening. It looks like it's going to storm here in Baltimore, so I'm not sure what it looks like there, but have a lovely evening, and we'll talk to you soon. But we'll be on for a couple minutes to answer any outstanding questions.
Mary?
Bye-bye. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah,
so for the next session, I have a sort of a conflict with it. It's our end of the year celebration. I would really Sorry.
Yes, you need to celebrate. I would say don't show up for this one.
So I haven't gone to the MAEOE website yet to check out where these links or the presentations, I guess, are recorded and put, but that the end one was the one I really wanted to attend, but I really also want to do this other thing. So I may not be there.
That's fine. I'm going to send out links as well once we're done with the final training to everyone who's in the registration, the CVent registration. But check out the, yeah, definitely just watch the recording. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Yeah, you're welcome. Enjoy your celebration, Jen. Definitely. Any other questions? I'm going to actually stop recording here.